At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI garbage. What's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Daniel Pierce, and I'm going to be your narrator. Now, let's begin. A current of chilled air from the scrubbers filled Amphitheater 12, carrying the loamy scent from the grave mall's imported moss. From her darkened tech booth high above the tiered seating, Asha Mendez tracked the violent spike on her console. Cortisol, adrenaline. The grave mall's biometrics showed clear distress. Below, Professor Rilken Thiers spoke, his rich baritone from his vocal synthesizer echoing through the lecture hall.
Behold, students, the grave mall of Athalagard, a creature of instinct and armor, whose every movement is a threat assessment.
Asha tightened her jaw and cued the lightning effect. A flash of searing blue-white light strobed across the central habitat, followed by a crackle of recorded thunder she downloaded from an archive of Earth's historical weather patterns. The students gasped. Rilken was a showman, turning fear of Deathworld's 101 into a semester-long haunted house tour. He gestured with a limb sheathed in living wood. Smaller tendrils along his torso rippled in a coordinated wave, one extending to tap the microphone clipped to his teaching robes, ensuring its position.
This creature exists in a perpetual state of threat assessment, its world divided into things it can eat and things that it can eat.
Asha toggled her view to the habitat's internal sensors. The grave mall's biometrics spiked again. The 10-ton beast of matted fur and armored plates huddled in the far corner, its bulk compressed as if to vanish. Its head, a wedge of bone and gristle, swiveled as its optical pits recessed deep in its skull and, shimmering with thermal heat, darted between the flashing lights and the low-frequency sonic agitators Rilken insisted were atmospherically crucial. The professor continued his monologue. He was a Sabellian, a composite colony organism encased in a living woody shell. When he got passionate, the hum from his core was a low thrum of excitement, a sound his species used to communicate communal feeling. As Operator 501, Asha cued the strobes and sonics. She took the remote position for its high pay and, more importantly, for the university species sequestration clause. As a student from a Class 5 homeworld, she could list her species only as undisclosed. Her mandate included the university's creature welfare mandate, a safety feature that authorized her to assume control if creatures' stress levels or shield fluctuations crossed a critical threshold. Rilken hated it, calling it bureaucratic overreach, but Asha considered it a necessary failsafe. It preserved her privacy. They just saw a student, or in Rilken's case, a voice on an intercom and a presence at the console. She glanced at the front row. Kelovar, a compact avian kessite, sat there. His plumage, layered volcanic glass, had a microscopic structure that absorbed light so completely he seemed a silhouette cut from reality. So monitored the containment field's energy fluctuations. He tapped his flex screen. His beak set in a firm, critical line as he gathered data for his argument.
And now,
Rilken boomed,
the moment you've all been waiting for. The feeding display. Operator, if you would be so kind as to initiate the predator-prey simulation.
Asha sighed. The simulation involved a canister of nutrient concentrate, engineered to release a pheromonal cloud that mimicked a fresh kill. A mnemonic tube would launch it into the habitat. The whole process was messy and entirely for show. Professor, she said into her calm in a calm, synthesized tone, the subject's cortisol levels are already in the red. I recommend halting the stimulation.
Absurd, Operator 501.
Rilken's reply crackled back.
A healthy dose of fear sharpens the senses. Fear is the galaxy's greatest teacher. Proceed.
Reluctantly, Asha raised a hand over the console. Before she could press the button, Rilken ad-libbed. He slapped a large button on his own lectern, one that created a flickering holographic image of a predator native to Gravemaul's homeworld. The flickering projection of a shrieking, winged hunter coalesced in the habitat's center. For the overstimulated Gravemaul, this shattered its remaining calm. The creature let out a low, guttural roar and charged. It charged toward the strobing lights that tormented it for the last 20 minutes, ignoring the hologram. It slammed its 10-ton mass against the containment shield. The shield, rated to stop a freighter, flared a searing white. A shower of white-hot motes sprayed down, and a sound like shearing structural plating ripped through the amphitheater. The students screamed, a sound of raw panic. Professor Rilken froze. The showman in him evaporated, leaving a teacher who had just endangered his entire class. The resonant hum from his body pitched into a high-frequency thrum of alarm. In the booth, Asher worked the controls, activating the welfare mandate. "Override engaged, Professor," she said, her synthesized voice cutting through the noise, level and clear. The strobing stage lights, the hologram, and the subsonic agitators all died at once. The amphitheater plunged into the emergency lighting's dim, steady red glow. The only sound was the Gravemaul's ragged breathing and the students' whimpers. "Professor," Asher cut through the quiet, crisp and clear over the internal comms. "The creature's just scared. Let me try something." Rilken, still standing stock still at his lantern, managed only a choked, affirmative hum. Asha patched her personal audio modulator into the habitat's audio feed. The device was a small, heavily modified piece of kit she built herself. She keyed in a sequence, a layered signal she synthesized after weeks of studying Gravemaul vocalizations from the university archives. She transmitted a soft clicking sound, a deep, resonant purr at a frequency associated with Gravemaul maternal calls. The sound, at a pitch below most species' hearing, filled the habitat. The Gravemaul's frantic movements slowed. Its assault on the shield ceased. Its optical pits recessed in its skull, which darted everywhere, now swiveled and focused on the hidden speaker from which the call emanated. It stepped hesitantly, then again. Asha keyed another command. A small panel slid open in the habitat's floor, and a dense block of nutrient-rich synthesized grubs dropped onto the mossy ground. The block sent a powerful chemical marker for the Gravemaul's preferred food, wafted through the enclosure. The massive beast lowered its head. It nudged the offering with its snout, then ate, its shoulders once hunched, lowering with every bite. A stillness fell over the amphitheater. A few students whispered to each other in hushed confusion. Professor Rilken stood speechless, his primary arms hanging at his sides. And in the front row, Kelovar lowered his flex screen. He saved the recording, capturing the chaos and its strange, quiet resolution, second by second. His avian features relaxed into a look of grim satisfaction. He had his evidence. The next morning, Kelovar's digital manifesto hit the campus network. His fringe activist group, the Safeguard Coalition, saturated the network at a level usually reserved for orbital sports finals or declarations of war. The centerpiece was a professionally edited video titled Aethelgard University, Negligence or Entertainment. Asha watched it on the terminal in her dorm room, a half-eaten bowl of reconstituted protein mash growing cold beside her. The video opened with Rilken's booming monologue, intercut with shots displaying the Gravemaul's spiking stress indicators, data Kello pulled from the public network feed. It showed the panic charge in slow motion, the shield sparking. Then it cut to a grainy, zoomed-in view of the tech booth. The console's glare obscured her face, but her actions were clear. The operator moved with deliberate purpose, diffusing a crisis the professor himself created. Kello's edit reframed the intervention as a symptom of systemic failure. The final shot was a simple, stark text overlay. Simulations are safer. Simulations are smarter. In live specimen labs now. The comment feed flooded with opinions. The operator has valor. Commend them. A commendation? Their staff. They were fixing a mess their superior made. Var is right. The whole course is a liability. My cousin took that class last term, said that class was the highlight of his studies. The Safeguard Coalition needs to relax. Relax? That thing nearly breached the shield. I was there. Asha closed the feed. Her privacy was holding, but the quiet life she wanted was dissolving. She wanted her work to stand on its own merits. Now her work was the biggest news on campus, and it threatened to bring the program she cared about crashing down. Her wristcom chimed with an incoming message from Professor Rilken. The text was a jumble of frantic characters and typos.
My office. Now, we have a problem.
A second message flashed on her screen before she could reply. An official summons from the Dean of Xenobiology. The subject line was a single word. Review. Asha ignored both messages, for now. She needed fresh air. She needed to see something other than a screen. She headed for the one place on campus that felt like a sanctuary, the Menagerie Commons. The Commons was a sprawling, greenhouse-like structure, a vibrant ecosystem that made Rilken's sterile amphitheater feel like a tomb. The air hung thick with the scents of damp earth, alien flora, and the musky odor of 100 different life forms living in managed harmony. Asha volunteered here whenever she had a spare hour. The Commons was the only place she could use her instincts. She found the Gravy Sloth habitat in chaos. A massive, four-limbed creature named Barnaby, a low-slung torso supporting his bulk, had wedged himself into a corner and stayed stubbornly still. A tall, lanky human with perpetually messy brown hair dangled a piece of dried kelp before him. "Come on, Gravy," the human said, waving the kelp. "It's your favorite, nice and crunchy. You love the crunch." Barnaby let out a low, vibrating grumble and stayed put. This was Jero Kellen, a senior and the student president of the Gravy Sloth Appreciation Society. Asha knew him by sight. He practically lived here. She moved toward Barnaby's flank, keeping her own posture relaxed and open. She came around, away from his line of sight, and reached out. She found a spot just behind the creature's primary vibrating dewlap, a nexus of nerve endings she recalled from studying the sloth's anatomy diagrams. She scratched, firmly and rhythmically. Barnaby's protesting grumble shifted, lowering in pitch until it deepened into a purr. The immense creature leaned into her touch, tilting his massive head to give her better access. After a moment, he shifted his bulk from the corner and flopped onto his side with a sigh that shook the floor. Jero stared, the piece of kelp dangling from his fingers. "Huh, you know the spot. He gets an itch there sometimes," Asha said, keeping her eyes on her work. "The support harness for his gravity sling rubs." "You're new," Jero said, stuffing the kelp into his pocket. "Are you new? I recognize most official volunteers. I just come by sometimes," she offered, shrugging. "Help out where I can." "Well, you're a natural," he offered a hand. "Jero Kellen." "Asha." She shook his hand, introducing herself to another student for the first time. "So, Asha," Jero continued, leaning against the habitat wall. "You see the propaganda Kelovar is spamming all over the network? That guy's been a thorn in our side for a year. Now he's got this incident to work with. He could actually convince the administration to shut us all down, turn this whole place into a simulation lab." He scowled at the thought. He looked from her to the purring Gravy Sloth and back again. A slow smile formed on his face. "You know, the club's leadership team could use someone with your instincts, someone who gets it. We're all passion, but you connect with them." For the first time since she arrived at Aethelgard, someone saw her for what she could do, and they were impressed. The offer made a warmth spread through her chest. Before she could answer, her wristcom chimed again, this time with a demanding buzz. Rilken. I have to go," she said, pulling her hand back from Barnaby, who grumbled in protest. "Think about it," Jero called after her. "We could use the help." Rilken's office was a monument to his ego. Holographic commendations, framed dissertations, and a particularly ostentatious portrait of himself locked in a dramatic pose with a now extinct predator lined the walls. When Asha arrived, however, the office was dim and still. The professor slumped over his desk, his usually immaculate woody sheath dull and scuffed, the smaller tendrils lining his torso coiled in tight knots against his body. The air in the room hummed with a low, droning frequency.
"They've put my class on probationary review,"
he said, his synthesized voice a monotone.
"The dean, he used the word reckless. 30 years I have taught this course. 30 years.
Asha stood in the doorway, waiting.
I panicked,
Rilken admitted, the words seemingly torn from him.
The shield sparked, the students screamed, and I froze. My show became real, and it overwhelmed me.
He looked up, his vibrating head membranes angled toward her.
You remain calm. How did you calm it?
She could tell him everything. About growing up on a planet where coexisting with creatures that could kill you was a daily reality. About humanity's millennia-long history of animal husbandry, a history that hardwired a certain kind of empathy into their DNA. Instead, she gave him the data. I replaced the aggressive stimuli with a counterstimulus, a vocalization associated with juvenile comfort. She explained, her voice as steady as the one on the comms. The sound encourages pacified behavior. The nutrient block provided a familiar scent, redirecting the subject's focus from the perceived threat to a familiar positive activity. Rilken stared at her, processing the information.
A behavioral approach, he murmured. More effective than my theatrics.
He sat up straighter, a flicker of his usual showmanship returning.
Operator, the review board wants a full incident report. They want us to demonstrate alternative de-escalation techniques. You could present your findings. From the booth, of course. Your identity would remain private. It would show them the department is taking proactive steps.
She answered immediately. No, Professor. I must decline. My privacy clause is absolute. Rilken's posture collapsed again. The low drone returned.
Then my career is over. Kalavar and his data-driven arguments will win. They will replace us all with simulations.
Asha felt a coil of something complex, pity maybe, or responsibility, tighten in her gut. She looked at the defeated professor, thought of Jarrow's plea, of Barnaby, the gravy-sloth, purring under her hand. Her privacy was her most valuable possession on this campus. But what value did it have if the university dismantled the things she cared about? I'll do it, she said, the words a compromise that tested her resolve. I will prepare a presentation, but my files stay sealed. That is the only way. He snapped his head up. The hum rising from his body shifted from a low drone to a higher, questioning pitch.
Of course, Operator 501, of course. I accept your conditions.
Kalavar's group plastered the campus network with their message. Sleek posters appeared overnight on every public message board, digital and physical. They featured a stylized snarling creature, an amalgam of the grave maw and a dozen other species. The bold text overlaid, simulate to elevate your GPA. Kello's team held silent, orderly protest outside the xenobiology building, their matching gray jumpsuits and grim expressions a stark contrast to the campus chaos. They resembled a new religious order more than student activists. Jarrow Kellen and the Menagerie Commons Club fought back. They saturated the network with short videos, a gravy sloth enjoying a vigorous belly rub from 3 laughing students, a colony of chromivores, small furry creatures whose tails secreted pigmented slime, creating a beautiful abstract mural on a prepared canvas. They used brightly colored posters that featured a slender herbivorous creature with twin sets of curving horns nuzzling a student's hand. The slogan was simple: ethical engagement is real education. The campus became a battleground between Kello's stark gray warnings and the Menagerie's vibrant, joyful images. Asha, working with Jarrow one night in the quieted commons, found a way to fight Kello on his own terms, with data. She pulled the historical biometric records for every creature that lived in the menagerie for the past 5 years. She cross-referenced stress hormone levels, sleep cycle disruptions, and appetite fluctuations with the volunteer logs detailing enrichment activities. The result? A clear data visualization. The visualization showed a massive drop in stress hormones and other poor health markers corresponding directly to periods of high student interaction and enrichment. Inversely, the stress levels spiked during semester breaks when the creatures received only basic custodial care. Jero watched over her shoulder as the data rendered into a clean, compelling graph. "Whoa," he breathed. "So they actively need the attention." "That's the argument," Ashes said, exporting the file. "Let's see how he refutes all feelings when he sees them plotted on a logarithmic scale." They pushed the visualization to the campus network on the menagerie's official account. The title was a direct challenge: The Data of Care. Within an hour, it gained more views than Kello's video. For the first time, the Safeguards Coalition campaign faced a meaningful counterargument, one written in their own language. Professor Rilken, emboldened by the small victory and eager to prove his methods were sound, decided on a fateful demonstration with a flock of mirrorfowl.
"I will showcase flocking-based threat evasion,"
he declared to Asha over the comm, his old showmanship creeping back into his voice.
"Contained, controlled, and perfectly safe."
Asha argued against it. Mirrorfowl were skittish. Their primary defense mechanism involved rapidly manipulating the light-refracting qualities of their plumage to create a convincing hard-light duplicate of themselves when startled, creating a storm of identical targets to confuse a predator. Handling them required a calm, quiet environment. Rilken, of course, opted for loud noises. He stood in the amphitheater's center, the review board and a handful of students, including Kelovar, flex screen at the ready, watching from the stands.
"Observe!"
he bellowed, clapping his woody hands together with a loud clack. The nearest mirrorfowl, a creature with plumage that gleamed like polished chrome, flashed with light. An identical hard-light duplicate appeared beside it, squawking in alarm. One duplicate startled the next, which created its own, triggering a chain reaction through the flock. Within seconds, over 100 identical squawking solid-like birds filled the amphitheater. They ricocheted off the walls, the ceiling, and each other. The amphitheater churned into a vortex of squawking, luminous birds. Rilken ducked and covered as his demonstration flew out of his control. Campus security deployed a wide-spectrum EM pulse to disrupt the flock's projection fields, bathing the entire room in a soft blue glow as the duplicates dissolved. When it faded, the original flock of mirrorfowl huddled in a trembling pile in the corner. Kelovar lowered his flex screen. He now had a recording of the demonstration's complete collapse. This was the final piece of evidence he needed. The official notice arrived the next morning. A campus-wide bulletin from the dean's office announced the verdict.
"Effective immediately. Ethelgard University suspends all live specimen courses and fieldwork pending a full safety review. The mirrorfowl incident triggered the university's automated, uncontained autonomous replication protocols mandating this action. The university has locked down the Menagerie Commons under restricted access." The official notice arrived the next morning. A campus-wide bulletin from the dean's office announced the verdict. "Effective immediately. Ethelgard University suspends all live specimen courses and fieldwork pending a full safety review. The mirrorfowl incident triggered the university's automated uncontained autonomous replication protocols mandating this action. The university has locked down the Menagerie Commons under restricted access." Asha found Jero standing at the Commons' main doors. A heavy magnetic lock glowed red above the handle, and a campus security drone hovered nearby, its optical censored and passive blue dot. Jero's easygoing demeanor evaporated, replaced by a weariness that slumped his shoulders. "They're locking us out," he said, his voice flat. "My senior project was a new enrichment curriculum for the chromivores. It's gone." He ran a hand through his already messy hair. "This goes beyond the project. What about them?
Barnaby needs his harness adjusted every day. The splatters need their mural canvases changed. They'll get basic food and water from the university staff, but that's it. No contact, no enrichment. Asha felt the lockdown like a sudden pressure in her chest. The one place on campus she could be whole now barred her. A subdued shuffling sound announced Rilken's arrival. The Cybele professor looked smaller, his vibrant woody sheath seemingly shrunk. His synthesized voice was quiet.
He was right. Kelovar was right all along.
He stopped beside them, gazing past the locked door toward some point far in the distance.
Years ago, I taught a student, brilliant, curious. Her name was Talia. Her curiosity outpaced her caution during a solo fieldwork exercise. She made a mistake.
The resonant hum from his body subsided to a low, mournful thrum.
I thought if I could teach my students to fear, to respect the danger, I could prevent that from ever happening again. But my way, it's wrong. I was just selling tickets to a show.
He turned his vibrating membranes toward Asha.
The review board refuses my calls now.
Asha looked at the red lock on the door. She pictured Barnaby alone and confused in his habitat. She thought of her constructed privacy, a shield that now kept her from protecting anything else. No, she said, her voice quiet but firm, cutting through the shared despair. Your method was wrong. Your goal was right. She looked from Rilken's defeated form to Jarrow's crestfallen face, and a new resolve solidified within her. We'll fix this. Their proposal was audacious. The formal 20-page document included risk assessments, staffing plans, and a detailed budget. They called it Meet a Monster Day. They planned to transform the Menagerie Commons into an interactive, student-led festival for one day, demonstrating safe, consent-based interaction and enrichment techniques to the entire university community. They needed faculty support, a respected name to champion their cause against the dean's lockdown order. Their best hope lay with a xenobotany professor, Dr. Solara. Known for her progressive teaching methods and her vocal support for student initiatives. They met her in her office, a warm, sun-drenched room smelling of alien pollens and rich soil. Asha laid out the plan, with Jarrow providing enthusiastic color commentary and Rilken offering quiet technical clarifications. Dr. Solara, a lithe Sylvanon with skin like polished jade, listened. Her primary manipulative appendage, a complex, multi-jointed limb, rested on her desk, its tip tapping a thoughtful rhythm. The proposal is sound, she said when they had finished. But the board will question its leadership. Professor Thayer is on probation, and Mr. Kellen, while passionate, has a record of organizational challenges. She looked at Asha. The plan hinges on the unseen operator, the one who calmed the grave maw. Who are you? Asha breathed in. She leaned forward and logged into the proposal document on the professor's desk terminal, using her personal credentials. She manually deactivated her species sequestration. Her student profile appeared on the screen. Asha Mendez, Department, Xenobiology, Species, Human. Dr. Solara leaned forward, her eyes widening slightly. Human, she murmured, the word filled with a sudden understanding. Of course. Your people have the most extensively documented history of animal domestication and husbandry in the entire Galactic Federation. This is more than a knack, Mrs. Mendez. It is a deep inheritance, both biological and cultural. She looked up, her expression turning decisive. The board will listen to this. They will understand that your perspective is deeply practical. Her appendage coiled neatly. I will sponsor your proposal. The dean's approval was provisional. They could have the commons for one day. Any safety breach, even the most minor, would make the suspicion of the live specimen programs permanent. He added a final condition.
Mr. Varr and his Safeguard Coalition, the official memo read, will have full access to act as independent safety observers for the duration of the event.
Jero groaned. He's setting this up to fail. Let him, Asha said, a quiet calm settling over her. Let him watch. Kello Varr found her 2 days before the event as she was calibrating the humidity levels in the Cassite songbird habitat. He stood in the doorway, his dark, glassy plumage so matte it seemed to absorb the room's light. He held his flex screen at his side. Mendez, human, he said in a series of rapid clipped bursts. This explains the statistical outlier. Your species' documented tolerance for risk and penchant for improvisation far exceeds the galactic average by several standard deviations. Hello, Kello, Asha said, her voice even as she continued calibrating the controls. Come to do a pre-inspection? I have come to inform you that I consider this event a gross violation of established university safety protocols, he stated. My associates and I will be in attendance. We will document every procedural lapse, every deviation from the approved plan. When an incident occurs, and an incident is a statistical inevitability when dealing with live specimens and amateur civilians, we will have a full record for the review board. His tone was absolute, his logic contained. He carried himself like a sentinel, protecting others from sentimentality. Asha turned to face him. She met his gaze. Good, she said. Bring your checklist. Bring your whole team. The data will speak for itself. She walked past him and picked up a laminated visitor's pass from a nearby table. She held it out to him. Remember to register. He took the pass. His feather's microscopic structure shifted, catching the light differently and making him subtly larger. He gave a curt nod and strode away. The night before Meet a Monster Day, only the soft chirps and rustles of its inhabitants filled the commons. Exhaustion settled in the warm, humid air. Asha and Jero sat on the floor in the main concourse, sharing a container of leftover synth noodle stir-fry. This was the first moment of rest they'd had in 12 hours. Jero broke a long silence with a simple statement of fact. You kept your species a secret. Asha poked at a noodle with her fork. I wanted a fresh start, she said in a low voice. Back at my secondary school, I was the strong human girl. I accidentally snapped the tension arm on a botany press because its rating was below human strength. For the rest of the term, that's all I was. The girl who breaks things. She looked up at him. People hear human, they think Deathworlder. They think durable, aggressive, reckless. I wanted my work to stand on its own. Jero was quiet for a long moment, watching her. Then he bumped his shoulder against hers. The contact was warm and grounding. Well, for what it's worth, he said, his voice soft. Before all this blew up, I just thought you were the brilliant girl who was amazing with the gravity sloths. He gave her a small, lopsided smile. The rest is details. A knot of anxiety in her chest loosened. For the first time, revealing her identity felt like reclaiming a part of herself. Meet a Monster Day dawned bright and clear. By midday, the Menagerie Commons bustled with a crowd of students, faculty, and their families. The air had a festival atmosphere. Asha organized the space into a series of interactive stations, each staffed by trained student volunteers from the Menagerie clubs. At one station, Jero, his earlier anxiety replaced with confidence, led a group of children in a game of puzzle box with the clever, furry chromivores, rewarding them with sweet sap treats when they solved the color-coded latches. At another station, a humbled Professor Rilken, stripped of his theatrical robes and wearing a simple Menagerie Commons staff shirt, explained the anatomy of a Gravysloth's hide. He spoke of the specific deep-pressure stimulation they enjoyed, demonstrating on a life-size model how to give a sloth hug that was both safe for the hugger and soothing for the huggee. He was a teacher again. His inner performer quieted, and he looked more at ease than Asha had ever seen him. Asha stood at the Cassite songbird habitat, showing a small group how to interpret the intricate trills and subtle crest movements of the birds, which corresponded to their social status and mood. From the corner of her eye, she spotted him, Kello Var, his team of gray-clad Safeguard Coalition members fanned out behind him. They held out their flex screens, observing. Kello fixed his gaze on a station where a volunteer was supervising a group of toddlers feeding leaf wafers to a herd of gentle, slender herbivores. His brow furrowed, his flex screen held loosely at his side. The scene defied his models. Joyful, managed order. Just then, a small Kessite child, Kello's own nephew, who tagged along, tripped over his own feet and tumbled onto the soft turf near Barnaby, the Gravisloss enclosure. A few visitors gasped. The child, startled, cried. Barnaby, who dozed peacefully, lifted his massive head. He observed the small crying avian. Deliberately, he extended his neck over the habitat's low barrier and nudged the toddler's shoulder with his large, leathery nose. A low rumble vibrated from his chest. The toddler's cry subsided into a hiccup of surprise. His parent rushed over, scooped him up, and gave a grateful nod to the student monitor and a soft pat at Barnaby's nose. Kello recorded the entire interaction, his expression a neutral mask. But, for the first time, a flicker of reassessment crossed his face. The crisis, when it came, was a simple mistake. The kind of error Kello built his entire philosophy on preventing. A nervous first-year volunteer, flustered by the number of people watching him, fumbled the magnetic lock on a habitat for a glide-wing colony. Furry leapers with broad patagia stretched between their fore and hind limbs, known for their timid but inquisitive nature. He was performing a scheduled feeding, a task he had performed a dozen times, but this time his hands were clumsy. The lock clicked open. Kello saw it happen from across the concourse. This was the failure he awaited. About 30 glide wings, roughly the size of house cats, wandered out of their open enclosure. They blinked in the main concourse's bright lights, their large dark eyes wide with surprise. A few visitors cried out. Before any real panic could set in, the student volunteers moved with composure. One group, identifiable by their blue armbands, formed a loose, smiling cordon, steering visitors away from the area. "Show's over here for a minute, folks. Let's give the little guy some space." Another group, led by Jero, retrieved a set of soft, squeaking toys from a nearby emergency kit. They used familiar calls and the toys to coax the curious glidewings back toward their habitat. Kello watched as Jero paused to put a reassuring hand on the mortified volunteer's shoulder. He offered a supportive word. Asha walked to the center of the open space. She knelt down and made a series of soft clicking calls. The last, most timid glidewing, which hid under a refreshment table, perked up its ears. It scurried out from its hiding place and ran directly to her, climbing up her arm to perch on her shoulder. She stroked its fur, then carried it back to the habitat where Jero's team already guided the others inside. She secured the lock herself, then turned to the quieted crowd. "All right, everyone," she said, her voice steady. "Thank you for your patience." The response to the minor problem was swift and coordinated. The entire incident, from the moment the lock opened to the moment she secured it again, took less than 2 minutes. Kello Var deliberately lowered his flex screen. His search for a safety failure revealed its triumph. He understood now that safety was competence in managing risk. The system was robust enough to absorb mistakes when they happened. After the last visitor left and the commons was quiet again, Kello approached Asha. The other volunteers gave him a wide berth. He stopped in front of her and held up his flex screen. With a few deft movements of his taloned fingers, he brought up the video files he recorded throughout the day. The mirror foul disaster, the child falling near Barnaby, the glidewing escape. One by one, he deleted them all. The gesture, an apology. "Your containment and response protocols," he said, his clipped speech pattern now carrying an undertone of respect, "are more robust than I anticipated." He swiped to a different file, a text document. "I have spent the last hour drafting a proposal for a new student organization," he continued. "The Campus Care Corps. Its mission is to work with the menagerie clubs to review and improve safety plans, source better equipment through university grants, and run regular response drills. He looked at her, his dark eyes serious. "A supportive partnership. I would value your input." Asha took the flex screen. She read the first few paragraphs of his proposal. The plan was logical, thorough, and collaborative. It showed Kelovar using his formidable organizational skills to build something up stronger and safer than before. She nodded and handed the flex screen back to him. "I think it's a good start." She held out her hand. After a moment's hesitation, he took it. His grip, like his personality, was firm, dry, and strong. The handshake was an armistice and the start of a partnership. Professor Rilken Thier sat in his office, the grand portrait of him and the Predator now seeming bombastic. On his terminal, the course catalog listing glowed. Fear of Deathworld 101. With a few keystrokes, he highlighted the word fear and deleted it. He thought for a moment, then typed a new title. Xenospecies Interaction Ethical Engagement 101. He spent the next hour gutting his old syllabus. Out went the predator-prey simulation, the holographic jump scares, the sonic agitators. In their place, he designed a new curriculum, modules on observational learning, labs on consent-based interaction, a final project on designing species-specific enrichment programs. When he finished, he sent the new syllabus to the department head and the registrar with a formal request for reinstatement. Then he opened a new message and composed a formal offer to Asha Mendez for the position of official undergraduate teaching assistant. He leaned back, the resonant hum from his body a soft purr. He glanced at a small framed picture on his desk corner, one he usually kept turned away. It showed a smiling young student in a field suit, Talia. He truly honored her memory, teaching others to build bridges. A better legacy than walls. A week later, the university's end-of-semester festival filled the main quad with light music and the smell of sizzling street food from a dozen different star systems. The Menagerie Commons had its own booth, which became the most popular attraction. Barnaby, the gravy sloth, was the guest of honor, munching on kelp on a stick, which a line of eager students offered him. Asha, now known to almost everyone on campus as Asha from the Menagerie, laughed as she explained the intricacies of chromivore art to a group of prospective first-years. She wore a simple Menagerie t-shirt and an easy smile. Jero found her in the crowd, pressing a cup of warm spiced cider into her hands. "Taking a break, celebrity?" he teased. "Enjoying the quiet," she grinned. He shuffled his feet, his easygoing charm replaced by a sudden awkwardness. "So, hey, now that the semester's basically over and the world is still turning, I was wondering if you wanted to get some food sometime. Actual food, a table, and you and me." Ash's smile softened, reaching her eyes. "I'd like that, Jero." "Great," he breathed, letting out a rush of air. "Excellent. Great." They stood together in the festival's noise, watching the crowd swirl around them. She was Asha Mendez, the human girl who was good with creatures, the new TA for the most popular class in the xenobiology department, about to go on a dorky, long-overdue date with a guy she liked. The moment felt normal, and she earned it.